episode 150 of the Vet SOS podcast. Remember, don't drown to see a transition. Grab the Vet SOS Lifeline. Vet SOS is brought to you by the Who You Know Network and proud members of the Prairie Deck community. Today, we're sitting down with Algrish Williams, veteran advocate, author, and consultant, to learn about his new book and the work he's doing to help our community. Right alongside, as always, is Keith. Keith, 150, man. Can you believe it? How you doing today?
Right? 150. Is it okay to say like 150 episodes of tradition unhindered by progress? Is that okay to say at this point? Like, no, I mean, this is quite the run, brother. And I mean, I'm still new to this. You've been riding this in this pilot chair for quite a while now. So how's it feel for you?
It's still surreal. I mean, it's been a lot of fun. We've met some great man. We've had some great conversations, and just going through this whole process and continuing to have people who want to sit down and talk to us is even probably the most impressive part. So it's always exciting and definitely looking forward to the future too.
Awesome.
So today we're sitting down with Algrish Williams, retired Command Sergeant Major, corporate leader and CEO and founder of Williams Leadership Consulting, where he empowers leaders to thrive in both corporate and personal settings. With a rich background spanning military service, corporate leadership, and entrepreneurship, Algrish is passionate about helping individuals unlock their potential through purpose-driven leadership. He is also the author of Navigating the Transition, a veteran's guide to excelling in corporate networking and lead with purpose, unleashing the power of meaningful leadership. Let me say that again. I think this is two books. Transition, a veteran's guide to excelling in corporate network and lead with purpose, unleashing the power of meaningful leadership. Sort of made that one big sentence there. Algrish works to bridge the gap between leadership theory and practical application, enabling others to excel. Algrish, I'm so happy to have you on here. You were a part of my transition, someone that I reached out to and got some mentorship from when I was in the process. So it's fantastic to finally sit down with you on camera here and have a conversation. How are you doing today?
Man, I tell you, I'm doing wonderful. Excited to be here. I love seeing the veterans when we transition. We really take it to another level. Either you're excelling really well, you still forget where you came from, or you're in that mindset of, I'm kind of out, but I want to still be in. And so I love seeing when folks transition, respect what they've done, love what they've done, and are thriving outside the uniform, because the uniform didn't define us. It just enhanced us. Well, if you was great, you might be even greater, right? So, but I'm excited to be here. Thank you all for the opportunity to come and chat with you all.
That is awesome, and I know that anybody who knows me, truly knows me, knows that I don't wish I was still in. It was a fun run, but I am enjoying being retired from the military and still trying to get back and help. So fantastic. Well, let's jump right into this with your transition story. As a sergeant major, I always love hearing the senior stories because they can get a little different. You can hear some good stuff. You can hear some really weird stuff too. We had the senior enlisted advisor on the show, and he was talking about how 10 days out from retirement he was in Afghanistan with the president. I was like, that's quite a transition. So tell us about yours.
Yeah, so transitioning for me, I think the part that was the most challenging, and I think it still is for many that are in command billets leaving. If you're just on the staff, you kind of get a pass to go ahead and do what you need to do, right? But when you're in the command chair, what often happens is, well, I need you, but you still got, I don't know if we could let you go to this internship program right now. Give me 30 more days. And then you give 30 more days. Well, then you give me 2 weeks. Well, we got someone that could sit in for me. Well, may, well, let's talk about it, right? And so it becomes one of those back and forth, and it really depends on the principal that you're working for. But one of the biggest challenge, I think, for many senior leaders is some of it is self-induced, right? You don't want to move out the position because you feel that things are going to fall apart without you. That's some of the places where I see many of us in those senior roles have the challenge of stepping away because I've built this up, I've done this. It's almost like it's mine, mine, mine. Whereas, no, it isn't. The Army, or whatever service you're in, continue to go well for the Army. So we keep rolling along. Whether you're there or not, if you left for 30, 40 days, I promise you nothing's going to break. But that is typically what I found to have been the challenge. Now, for me, I was at a garrison. And so the difference between a traditional command and at a garrison. A garrison, for me, I had maybe 11 total uniform personnel in my command. It was about 1,400 civilians, and it was a well-run oil machine. Where I came in was really leveraging the gap between the various services on the installation, whether that be our AFES or our post exchange shopping mall for those who aren't familiar with that, or our medical facilities, our housing. So for me, one of the biggest challenges was the housing piece, right? Because soldiers transitioning from one location to the other. I had almost 800 housing on the base for family, and then of course my single soldier space, I had plenty of space in them, so really no challenge there. But to work with the civilian community to bridge the gap to provide those services. That was one of my premier tenant, and so for me, that part was a little hard to kind of step away from when you have soldiers on Facebook complaining that they couldn't find, they couldn't get into housing. They signed up for housing, they showed up, but then it's not ready. So now I got to work with IGA, the hotels, and all these other things. Now here it is. I'm clearing, but I'm calling IGA, the hotel, say, hey, listen, I got one more favor I need from you. I got a young man or a young family that just came in. Their house won't be ready for 2 weeks. Can we get them in housing? And oh, by the way, can we keep them at the housing allowance rate for the month or the 2 months that they got to stay in this space? But now, truly, that to me, that was the hardest part for me breaking away. But once I broke away, it was phenomenal. I started connecting with leaders on LinkedIn. I started that really how you and I met started through MTR and different transitioning programs to get an understanding what was it like to transition, because a lot of people in uniform like to tell you how to transition. I don't know how that worked out for y'all, but I don't know. You haven't done it yet, but you're telling me what I should do, and none of it makes sense. And then I get out the door, and it's a completely different party. But thank goodness for the nonprofit organization, even platforms like this, where we get to hear from others who have successfully gone through the process. Now, it wasn't necessarily easy. Now, I'm not gonna tell you it was easy. I might have made it look easy, but I got up every morning for about 6 months, dressed up in a suit and tie, doing this kind of thing here with folks on LinkedIn, doing interviews. I swore I had to have connected with at least 200 people before I actually started working, doing virtual interviews and coffee chats. And so, if you're not disciplined to take the time to do the homework, meaning read up on where you want to, because many of us don't know where we want to go. I don't know about y'all, but honestly, when I got asked the question, what do you want to do when you grow up? I'm like, well, I've done this, I've done that, I could do this, I could do that. Well, now pick one. Oh, one. Okay. Well, I like working with people. Well, what with people? Well, I'm an HR guy, but I really don't want to work HR. Or, many of us go into risk and compliance because it's simple working with policy and so forth. So that was probably the hardest question for me initially is, what do you want to do when you truly get to this environment? I had to sit down. I created this quad chart, which you'll find it in the book as well, just to write down first industries. So I started just looking at industries, and then I look at what I didn't want to do. So that was the best part for me, is identifying what I didn't want to do, so I could focus on places where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
But then I focused on culture, people, and then I started looking at, if I like this organization, okay, good. Now I could figure out what I want to do in this organization. So I'll pause there. I know, man, we could keep going on that question there for a minute. Hopefully, I've answered
Oh yeah,
it.
that's fantastic, and very similar to how I did it. I used the heck out of Veterati,
Mm,
really to cross things off the list,
yeah.
talking to experts in different fields and going,
Yes.
nope, don't want to do that, don't want to do that, don't want to do that. And that was a huge tool for me.
Yeah.
I love the approach.
Yeah.
I personally completely agree with the approach, because that was really how I did it, and
Yeah.
to me, I found it very beneficial and very helpful. And um, the garrison, I got the opportunity to be the DPTMS NCOIC, and loved it. It was one of my favorite jobs,
Oh, it was.
and you know being in the garrison and learning how to use all the resources and network and pull people together, and it was fantastic. And a good command team in the garrison makes a world of difference, especially overseas. I was in Korea when I was with the garrison, and it makes a world of difference when you have that strong command team that
Yeah.
is really customer service focused and based and wants to, really make things happen. So that's fantastic. I love the fact that you were still helping soldiers. And, a couple of days out, you're like, I'm clear, and but we got to take care of this, and you still made it happen. What do you
Yeah.
think, Keith?
I mean, I think he hit so many major points, but I love the fact because you talk about it in your book too. You mentioned like discipline, adaptability, and teamwork. They're assets that veterans bring to roles in the private sector. We employ them in our transition, but then we continue to employ them in the private sector or even the federal, whatever space we move into. So I'm just curious, like, what's your thoughts or your insight on how veterans, there's always here, like, I don't know how to translate my skills, right? I don't know. I can do it all, right? Veteran, and they can. I wholeheartedly agree. A veteran can step in almost damn near any job. May not be the top employee on day one, but by month six, they're climbing the ladder, right? So how do veterans with your experience and stuff, how do they communicate those transferable skills during interviews or writing resumes or just even just figuring out what they want to be when they grow up?
Yeah, so really great question. For me, and I'll use me as a talking point first. One of the things I did was when I started having these conversations and asking the question, I kept hearing terminologies that I wasn't familiar with. But, I've done just like project management. So what is project? What exactly is that? And they started talking about it. I said, oh, that's ops, operations. That's, task list, checking off tasks. So
Been there,
what I
done that.
started doing is as I started having these conversations, which again is so important for veterans to realize the power of connecting and having conversation. We have and Sean, you know this from a garrison. Man, we have so many acronyms. I can. Now that's garrison is an army inside of an army. It's nothing like an army garrison. You can't prepare for that kind of role. You have to just show up and learn it. And so where I'm going with this is YouTube was my friend. When I started interviewing, virtual interviewing with folks, and they started bringing up the different vernaculars or acumen of what they were doing, I'll go look up those terminology and see it in action. And then for me is when I started realizing, oh, okay, CRM. Okay, that's email po. That's the system that we use. So that's fine. So the systematic approach, the things that it's a corporation, the government, we really are using the same type of approaches, but different language. Now, some things, in the corporate world or private sector, we're doing things for profit. That was a plus for me because from a garrison perspective, my MWR was for profit. And so P&L, well, a lot of service members don't understand what a P&L is, profit loss statement. So again, for me, and I can't really talk for everyone, is I utilize the tools to help me understand and translate those language. And as I'm talking to veterans that are transitioning, that's going through the same thing, write down the things that you're good at. Let's just don't worry about the job yet. Write down the things that you've done. What are you good at? Write down the things that you're passionate about and just put it on paper. Let's look at those words. Now let's go over to Google. Now you got all these AIs. You can actually just type in, your job description from the military. You could go to the trade out guide that give you exactly what that military occupational skill is, and then tell it to translate it to what a civilian occupation is. Now, for many of us in uniform, I don't want to do that. I did that for 20 years. I want to do something different. So, what does different look like? And so for me now, it's what are you willing to give up? How much are you willing to learn? Because if you don't know it per se, and to Keith's point, veterans, we can walk in any space and take on almost anything because that's what the military has asked us to do. Now, I'll go back to you. I was an HR guy in the Army. Now, between 95 and 2002, April Fool's Day, that's when I got out. I could tell you my MOS says 42 alpha, but the jobs I've done probably about 20 or 30 different MOSs while I was in because the job had to get done. And so if that means be the project manager, if that means, one of the most unorthodox things that I did, I work as a veterinary technician. I actually went on missions to vaccinate animals, to do dental work, to clean animals' mouth, military working dogs, family animals. And you like, I thought you was an HR guy. I was, but I was working in a medical veterinary command. So they were short staffed, and guess what needed? Hey, soldier. I need you. We're gonna do some on the job training, and that's one of the things that I think really make it so easy for veterans to move into another space, whether it be the private sector, contracting, whatever floats you out, state government, and fill in the gap because we will figure it out. And if that's simply using the tools to learn, we're gonna get there. Uh,
Yeah. And Sean, I was looking for the bomb button, right? Because I
Yeah, we don't have
loved,
it now.
I know, right? We lost the old platform. We had a bomb because you gave a big truth bomb that I love, right? So I was in HR in the Army, but I pivoted into HR in the post in the private sector.
yeah,
And all that to say, I was looking at these HR job titles, and one of the biggest examples I'll use with people, because you mentioned all these acronyms, like HRIS
yeah,
programs, and other veterans that I'm talking to, they're looking to pivot in HR, and they see that it requires all this experience with HRIS, human resources information systems. And they're like, I've never done that. I'm like, have you ever used an Excel spreadsheet? Because that's all it is. I'm like, come on, man. So, but we don't know that, and
yeah,
so you hit such a huge point for anybody listening in, and that's in transition. Do your research, because
yeah,
again, yeah, we disqualify ourselves because we don't know the language that
yeah,
of the industry we might be trying to pivot into. And with just a little bit of research, okay, maybe I don't have experience with that exact platform or program, but man, I've got something similar. And on the resume now, I just got to bridge the gap, right? That's what we call bridging the gap. I just got to
mm.
take take what I've got that's relevant and show you how it's relevant on my resume. Um,
But I want
so
to add
you,
one more thing before you jump to
yeah,
Clint.
absolutely.
LinkedIn is you get the premium package for veterans.
Yeah.
They got classes on there too. Just
Hmm.
click the training, and they'll walk you through the same kind of steps to where you see this process, the interview, the translating thing. I mean, today's day and age, I'll be honest. If a service member called me and said, I don't know how to translate my skill, I almost want to slap myself. Or I reach out through the screen and say, can I do? Because it's funny. It was a drill sign. I had this slogan: when you ask me something stupid, just go ahead and raise your hand and slap yourself, because that was done. Are you wanting me to do it for you, or did you take the time to really just look? Now it makes it so
Yeah.
much easier. Now I'll be honest. I love helping. Do a little bit of research, just a little bit. That's
Yeah.
like just, kind of like you know what was coming on. You went and got some information out of the book, right? Do a little bit of research, because one, it allow you to connect one with the other person that you're talking to. When that recruiter, that HR manager picks up the phone to ask you some questions, and you start really speaking a little bit of the language of the culture, it's like, oh, okay, all right. Your resume wasn't all that hot, but keep going. Let me hear some more, right?
See, you're talking. We were talking old school before we started recording, and that you went back old school again right there, because that's what it used to be.
Yeah,
As a a E3 E4, go look it up.
yeah.
But and you're like, man, why can't you just tell me the answer? And then you realize after the fact that you're learning to search the regs, you're learning to do research, you're learning to
Hmm.
find the answers, and I agree with you. Take a minute and do some research first,
Yeah.
and if you still can't, no, that's fine. I have no problems helping people, but at least try to do some research, try to learn a
Yeah.
little bit, and a hand up versus a hand out, right?
Yeah,
And
one
I
hundred
mean, we
percent.
hear it all the time.
Yeah. And yeah, my first NCOIC at my first unit, God, I hated him for it early on. But, I'd ask him a question, and his only answer would be the name of the policy memo or the regulation that the answer was in.
Yeah,
I'd be like, hey, what, just ask him a question. He'd be like, AR 670-1. Okay,
mm-hmm.
but what's the answer? AR 670-1. Go look it up. Go find it. Or I'd ask him, like, what acronym is this? And what acronym do you think it is? Go check it out on this. And yeah, we retain the stuff better too, rather than just hearing it, going to find it and learn it and all that.
Yeah,
So Algrish, we've been talking about the books, and I want to uncover even more of those, but I don't want it to overshadow the flip side or the other thing you've got going on, the Williams Leadership Consulting. So tell us a little, for folks out there that don't know, like, so what is that all about, and what are you doing for folks with that program?
So with Williams Leadership Consulting, funny story how I started this platform. I honestly started this platform because I was doing some. I was asked to do a couple magazine thought leadership article with my current employer, and it didn't quite go as I expected. They really, because of branding and the appearance of things, my language in the article that I wrote was changed significantly to match more of the company versus the insight that I truly wanted to provide. And so it
Mm,
was told, well, just go ahead and, if you want to continue doing things like that, just do it on your own. And so that was my initial creation of Williams Leadership Consultant, to start publishing, whether it be articles or literature. And then from there, the question that I got on a regular basis was, I don't understand how you transitioned so successfully. Can you walk me through what you did? And as I'm going through, I kept all my notes on my phone. As I go through these little notes and connection, I started realizing I'm answering the same question over and over. Why don't I just go ahead and put it in a book? So that's really how I started this thing off. So I started putting it in a book, and I started reaching out to others that have done the same thing I've done. Say, hey, give me some of your thought process. Matter of fact, I asked five to say, hey, come on, join me. I want this one particular chapter in this book to be dedicated to others sharing some of the same challenges and insights that they went through to make it to the other side. So that way, it's not just me saying and some of the research that I've done. But overall, Williams Leadership Consultant is my consulting platform where I connect with veterans and help them transition into an organization. I'm also available to organizations to help them onboard veterans, because oftentimes when we come into an environment, that adaptability piece is a little challenging, right? Because we used to go 99 miles an hour. Well, now you're coming into an organization where you change one thing that could significantly impact an entire organization or industry. And so before we change, we have to understand, what does this tie to? So really getting them to understand how to first communicate at that level, build up the acumen, and understand, slow down, it's okay. It's not, doesn't mean that you lost your purpose. Slow down and understand the language, and also allow the corporation or the company to understand the mindset of a veteran and where we come from. Because oftentimes, as we transition into these areas, it's, well, you don't know this acumen, so yeah, I just need you to do this thing. But what am I capable of doing? What is it that I bring to the table, and really show them how to unpack that veteran skill set, because one veteran could probably replace 4 or 5 people on your staff if you really know how to use them. But then it becomes an issue. So I also have to sit down with the veterans to really show them to kind of put your best foot forward, but also be mindful that once you start getting good, you're probably going to get abused unless you understand how to set boundaries. So those are some of the
mm,
ways I'll support the veterans and the organization. Then, of course, the other part of it is the leadership piece, right? Uh, you know, there are leaders out there that are great leaders. There are managers that are great managers, and they're kind of two separate things. Anyone could manage. If I'm good at being a PC or a podcast person, now I take you and turn you around from a podcast host to managing a staff of 100 people. Well, how did we prepare you for that? What are the
yeah.
lessons that we taught you going up to that? Now, for many of us in uniform, we've had those lessons maybe from day one. I was a PFC when I joined, and I was an assistant squad leader. Then I became a platoon sergeant in basic training, and then I became the first sergeant, the student first sergeant. Then I went into a unit, and I started. So we start grooming and building leaders and preparing them from day one. It is not always the same in a lot of these private sectors. You are great at this job, so we're going to promote you. But yeah, I guess we didn't necessarily prepare you for people management. And so that's where I come in, to help those leaders that were great managers understand the process of people, and putting the people in the process together so that they could manage more effectively and empower their formation through effective leadership and leading with purpose and intentionality.
Yeah. And in your book, Lead with Purpose, you talk about meaningful leadership, right?
Yes.
And I've got a master's degree in organizational leadership. I've learned about all these different leadership theories, and that term is kind of a theory I hadn't really heard of before. So for other folks out there, because again, authentic leadership, servant leadership, all these other different theories. But I liked your take on it. So how does your the way you define meaningful leadership, how does that differ from all those other traditional leadership approaches that are out there?
Well, when you think about meaningful leadership, you're thinking about people first. That's really one of my biggest concepts, right? It's people first. And from the military, you are all Army, so you've heard this terminology before, right? The what's your number one resource in any organization? It's the people. We have to
Sure.
start with the people, and then once we get the people, we create around the people. And so, if as leaders, we understand the principle of managing people by first connecting with people, being deliberate about connecting with people, understanding the people that's in our platform, their skills and attribute, and more importantly, how do we, the leader, help them get to where they need to get to and support them intentionally so that they can be seen as a valid asset to the organization, but more importantly, cast the vision and show them how they are part of that vision. You know, as an example, what I used with someone yesterday is imagine $100. That's the organization. Well, you probably are only 2 cents in that organization. But if I take the 2 cents out, that only leave $99.98. That's not a whole business. So how do that 2 cent make an impact in that entire dollar? And that's part of where I'm coming from with meaningful, intentionally stopping, tying me to that 100. So now that I know that my 2 cents makes a difference, more than likely I'm going to put forth more effort. Now, it's not just necessarily, yeah, I'm getting paid on the first and the 15th. When I come to work, my job, what I'm doing has impact on these lines of effort. My 2 cents change the atmosphere. My 2 cents add to the culture. My 2 cents tie to the vision. My 2 cents is necessary. So therefore, I'm vital to this mission. I'm important to
Yep.
this mission. And so the meaningful part of it is really tying the people to the why and the what and the how of that organization, if that makes sense to you.
Oh, makes perfect sense, and I love that
Perfect.
tying it
And
to the why. The what? Yeah, go ahead, Sean. 'Cause, yeah, that was the nail
I'm
on the
just
coffin right there.
I just, wish he would have been one of my sergeant majors when I was in. I mean, how many times did you get told, that you're trying to ask questions to understand the bigger picture? How many times did you hear a soldier say, "Why are we doing this?"
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's able to tie it to the bigger picture and what that impact of going out there and PMCSing that vehicle
Yeah.
every Monday does, or whatever the case may be. And it's having that level of understanding at every level is fantastic. And I 100% agree with you, especially in the civilian sector. If you understand your impact and your 2 cents matters to make that dollar, you're going to be in there grinding every day, doing everything you can to make everything work right. And that's just fantastic. I absolutely love it, Algers. I mean, what you're doing is fantastic. Obviously, the impact you had in the service was fantastic. But now you're continuing that legacy through your consulting firm, through your education and mentorship that you're providing for transitioning service members, and just man, love what you're doing, and so glad that you're out here doing it for us.
I appreciate it. And for you, Sean, since you love that book, I got one more coming. I think you're going to like this one even more than the last one.
All right. Well, we're like I told you before, we got to get you on our new show coming out where we're going to sit down with authors and
Yeah.
do a little bit more deep dive into specific books too, so they can talk about the why behind it and things
Yeah.
like that. So definitely going to get you on there to talk about your books as well.
Yeah, absolutely love to.
Oh,
Fantastic. Well, Keith, we're at
I
that time,
know
man.
we're at time. Yeah, like I could keep going forever. 'Cause this is my bag too, August. Like I love leadership discussions and just the transition piece, but also yeah, leadership theories and strategies and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, yeah, I'm definitely sensing a kindred spirit. So I'm glad we finally got to meet within this space. But unfortunately, yes, we are at time, and it's heartbreaking. Time flies, I guess, when we're having fun, right?
Yeah, but we don't
So
have to end here. We could continue this offline one day because this is
absolutely.
something that
No,
I
I
love. So
I shot you a connection request on LinkedIn already. So all right, but before we go, August, one last question. So the folks listening that maybe want to get the book or reach out to you for your consulting services, or just maybe have some transition mentorship type questions, how can folks get in touch with you?
well, I'll tell you. So if you want to get a hold of me, again, I'm Algrish Williams. The easiest way and fastest way to catch me is on LinkedIn. You could go to my website, williams-leadership.com, and hit the connect and book through there. But the fastest and best way is actually on LinkedIn. You message me, you will get me there, and of course, you'll see me sharing some tips and leadership tricks, some transitional tips there. So you'll get a whole lot of impact just by connecting with me on LinkedIn and following me there.
Awesome. So everybody, yeah, go check out Algrish's work. He's doing an amazing stuff in our community, and we're so thankful for what he's doing. So, and on behalf of the entire Vet SOS family, we would like to thank everyone for joining us today. Vet SOS is continuing to grow and expand, and you can follow us on all the social media platforms. Make sure to check us out on all three of our shows, and to follow and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts from. We're on YouTube, Reese Cross America Radio, The Parade Deck, and all your favorite podcast platforms. And as always, remember, don't drown in the sea of transition. Grab the Vet SOS Lifeline.
That's it.